Tough being Falcon fan. So I tune in the Falcon Birdbath. Brother and cousin are Saints and Buccaneer fan. Every time I get to cooking with facts from Birdbath Analysis by Seymour. Brother and cousin gang up on me to listen to cousin talk about Buccaneer Championship.
Water's what I swim in.
What the
I go home after work. Water's what I live in.
Let him cook, Bruce.
Water's what I'm sipping. So if you wanna sip then, I'll give you some. You don't even have to chip in.
Let him cook.
My brother's no better. He always tries to troll. He always troll with 28-3. Cannot troll Falcon fan. Resolve is stronger and tougher than overcooked beer meat. Live from underground bunker. Step into Birdbath. My family, it's your boy Seymour the C. Mitchell checking in with another episode of the Falcons Birdbath. Shout out to all our loyal subscribers and viewers that were repeating and returning. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button down below in the description. And also, tune in the comments and let us know what you guys are thinking about what we're talking about. Now tonight, the Falcons are actually starting their first preseason game. But there's a few things that I'm looking for tonight, but I'm also going to be looking out for the rest of the preseason moving forward. But first and foremost, I've actually seen a lot of Falcons fans upset that Raheem is actually talking about not playing Michael Penix and some of the other key starters in the preseason games. And honestly, I mean, I get it, I understand, but I don't think this is actually a bad idea. For one, if I'm not mistaken, there's only 4 teams that actually have quarterbacks on them that have played in the Super Bowl over the last 5 years. Eagles, Rams, 49ers, and of course, Kansas City Chiefs. 3 of those teams, Eagles, Rams, and 49ers, do not typically play their main starters in preseason games. And Jalen Hurts is a guy who does get hurt a little bit. He plays a little bit of a physical style of football, but he definitely delivers in playoff time when winter comes. And his team seems to be pretty prepared and playing some of their best football later. Now, I think that Raheem Morris has a similar philosophy because he coached with McVay, who actually does the same thing. And I think he's learned a lot underneath McVay. And Shanahan is a guy who's been to the Super Bowl twice over the last few years. And while he hasn't won the Super Bowl, I don't think that he has a bad philosophy with this. His teams are actually riddled with injuries quite often, and we can throw up some debates and questions about why he's getting so many injuries with his team. But I think the important thing is actually that he understands that you have to have load management with some of these guys. You can never tell when some of these guys are going to actually get hurt. Christian McCaffrey, for example, is a guy who usually never get hurt. In the past, I've been an avid fantasy football player. He was a guy that they talked about being durable and never missing a game. And he was known as one of the most durable running backs over the beginning of his career until he wasn't and he got hurt. Now he's a guy that kind of deals with injury. Football's a very brutal game. Another reason I'm okay with them not playing Michael Penix specifically in the preseason is because the preseason NFL defenses are going to be pretty vanilla. I've seen a few people who have said that they want to see that Michael Penix can kind of deal with pass rushes and he needs a little bit more reps, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But anything that they're going to throw at him is going to be less exotic than anything that got thrown at him last year when he had his first 3 starts and what he had against the Broncos. And one of the last reasons that I'm okay with them not actually starting Michael Penix in the preseason is because the way that Raheem actually conducts some of his practices. One thing that stood out to me, and I don't know if all NFL teams do this, but Raheem had a lot of heavy 11-on-11 periods when I got to see the Falcons actually in training camp. There was a lot of training and a lot of just live action and kind of getting guys used to situational football. Raheem is on record saying that he's not a big fan of 7-on-7 because it's not as realistic. And honestly, as a former college athlete, I kind of agree with that. I played linebacker, and I wanted to work on my pass coverage, but I always felt like 7-on-7 didn't give me a realistic view. For one, I know that they're going to be passing, so there's no pass rush there. Quarterback isn't under distress, and they're not catching me off guard. Kind of wish that we would have done a lot more 11-on-11 so we could get a little bit more live reps and see what it's going to be like when I'm having to cover some of these receivers in space or having to, cover a back out of the backfield or getting used to getting caught off guard. And I think that Raheem actually does a really good job of that as a coach, trying to simulate as close to live speed and keeping everybody healthy. Kind of goes back to the whole thing about preseason. When you're playing some of your guys out there, you're hoping that you just get out of the preseason without any injuries. And we're still set for joint practices as well too. So now moving on, some of the key things I want to look for in the game tonight and just the rest of the offseason moving forward are position battles. I'm looking at wide receiver, safety, nickel, edge, tight end, and a little bit of kicker. The wide receiver position, I was telling you guys about Nick Nash, but over the last week, Casey Washington has actually been making quite a name for himself in headlines, the plays that he's actually been making in practice. And he's actually taken over a lot of the first team starting reps, if I'm not mistaken, for Darnell Mooney, who's actually been out with an injury. He's a guy that I thought was in danger of not even making the 53-man roster because last year he only played in 8 games. And Nick Nash is a guy that I have not actually seen get very many reps in practice so far, and I haven't heard a whole lot about him. Now, we know that the Falcons receiver room is quite deep already. We know that Darnell Mooney, when he comes back, is going to be there. Drake London is a lock. Ray McLeod is a lock. And Jamal Agnew is a lock because he's actually going to be a special teamer playing for us out there on return team, presumably kick return team, but maybe even punt team. Kaderil Hodge also is a guy that I think could potentially be a lock. As of right now, he is the immediate backup for Drake London in case he goes down. He actually plays that specific receiver role in this offense. And that's the thing. We have guys who fit specific roles on this team, regardless of what you want to call their position. But he's a guy that's a veteran that's also a heavy special teamer for us as well, too. And if you look at all those names right there, that's already 5 receivers. A lot of teams don't carry more than 5 or 6 receivers because a lot of times the guys that you can have as special teamers as wide receivers, you also have defensive backs that can do the same thing, and those defensive backs actually will play in rotation a lot more. So it's going to be interesting to see how many receivers that the Falcons actually want to carry this year. If Casey Washington makes the team, that's probably going to be 6 receivers there. And there's also still have DJ Shark, who I think can actually be a guy that's going to make the 53-man roster and actually take away some playing time from some of the other guys. Once he learns this offense, I don't know what the deal is with him, and I'm not sure how much they like him as of right now. David Stills and Chris Blair are also there for competition as well, too. But I think a lot of that's going to be contingent on what actually happens at the safety position, which is actually another place where I think we want to focus a lot of attention on. As of right now, they say that there's still a heavy competition for who's going to start next to Jesse Bates with Xavier Watts or Jordan Fuller, or DeMarco Hellams potentially. And these are all 3 guys that I know are going to make the 53-man roster. They're probably all going to play in various situations, but it's just going to be a matter of who's going to start and who's going to play as much. Because these are guys that you probably want to get on the field situationally. And to be honest, I think some of the veterans are going to kind of have the edge, at least in week 1 and maybe early on, when it comes to some of these position battles on the line and in the secondary. But they're a little bit more used to game speed, and they have a little bit more experience just knowing what to expect out there on the football field. But my money is on Xavier Watts as the season progresses by as early as week 2, 3, or even 4. Another place that I want to be looking, like I said, at nickel is out there with Billy Bowman. As of right now, D. Alford still is the nickel cornerback. For the camp that I saw, he was playing a little bit more, and he wasn't too terrible. And I don't think that he's really that bad in general if you can kind of get a little bit of a pass rush out there. A lot of people think that he's terrible in pass coverage, but honestly, I think he's more of a liability in the run game, and that's why I want to see Billy Bowman out there. I don't know what his coverage skills are like, but I'm really excited to see what's going to happen when he's getting reps out there tonight and throughout the rest of the preseason. I do plan to attend some of the joint practices if I get a chance. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does in coverage out there as well, too. I do have confidence in Billy Bowman actually taking over that nickelback position as early as, like I said, maybe week 3 or 4, because if he can make a few more plays and he can actually be a special teamer, it's going to be hard to keep him off the field. I don't want to project to get ahead of myself because there's a lot of respect for what these guys have as veterans and what they know how to do and understanding game speed. But I do think that there's a world where he actually takes over pretty soon. The main place that I'm really excited to see what happens tonight moving forward and the rest of the preseason is on the edge. As of right now, Leonard Floyd and Ebiketie are our listed starters on the Falcons website. If you look at what they're doing, the Falcons basically have their base formation as nickel. They have basically accepted that teams are probably going to try to spread them out and run the ball on them probably. General are probably not going to get as much at 3-4 formations and probably not going to get as many odd formations out there. But I'm very excited to see what happens with James Pearce Jr. He's had a really great camp so far, but I'm even more excited to see Jalon Walker. He's a guy that over the last few days of this week, they said as they've introduced him into some of the scrimmage and some of the live practices, has had a couple of good practices in a row. On the defensive line, I'm really excited to see what happens with Ruka Roro and seeing if he dominates early on in the game against some of the ones as well. I'm also very excited out there to see what happens with Zach Harrison, and I hope that he gets some very early rotation against the starters as well, or whoever that the Lions are going to put out there, because I think that they do play their starters in the preseason. Another name that I've actually talked about before is Simeon Barrow, and I'm really excited to see if he's a guy that can crack rotation. I don't care who he plays against. I just want to see him in a lot more live reps. So I want to see what he can do against live competition and see if he's a guy that's actually going to be able to make the 53-man roster. I like a lot of our rotational guys, but he's a guy that I've had a few people tell me, and don't get mad at me, he looks a little bit like Grady Jarrett early on in his career. Those are large shoes to fill, but he does have the footwork and the quickness to be versatile in this defense from what I've seen on tape when him playing in Miami. So I'm really excited to see how they're able to utilize him out there tonight and the rest of the preseason. Another guy that I also want to see is Brandon Dorless. Out there in camp, I saw him a little bit, but he didn't quite pop in person the way I was hoping. He wasn't bad, but I'm really excited to see what happens with him and how they actually utilize him tonight. That's our show for today. Stay tuned for the rest of the offseason. I hit you guys after the game to kind of give you my key takeaways and my thoughts on what I'm seeing so far. D-Mo to C. Mitchell, Falcons Bird Bath, Point Game Official. Checking out, baby. Peace.